What do you do when somebody is continually crossing your boundaries? People ask me this all the time. They say, these people keep, not respecting my boundaries, right? Like they keep messing it up for me. What do I do? And whenever I hear that question, I automatically know that this person has somehow misunderstood what a boundary actually is. Because if you understood what a boundary actually is, you wouldn't be asking that question. And here's why. I'm going to explain. A boundary is not about somebody else's behavior. A boundary is about you and your behavior. A lot of people misunderstand this. They think a boundary is trying to control other people or, dictate how you want other people to act. It's actually not that at all. A boundary is basically, imagine if there's like a bubble around me. A boundary is just stating where that bubble is, and that if that bubble is somehow not being preserved, what I'm going to do to protect the integrity of my bubble. Notice, it's all about me. It has nothing to do with anybody else. Let me give you an example. I have a boundary around being around people who are yelling. I just don't do well with it, right? When people are yelling at me or trying to even if there's an argument, when there's yelling, I immediately shut down. It's just not good given like my childhood and just triggers way too much. It's just like that's not good for me to preserve the integrity and the peace of my bubble. So I have a boundary that I can't be in conversations where there is yelling. And if there is yelling, I'm gonna have to remove myself from it to preserve the integrity of my bubble. Okay. That's an example of a boundary. It's about me and my limit. Now, here's the thing. Let's say I'm in a conversation with somebody who is yelling. Or maybe it doesn't start that way, but then it starts to get very loud and it's yelling or an argument, whatever it may be. In that moment, I have a choice, right? I can honor my boundary or I can choose to not honor my boundary. If I want to honor my boundary, I can take any number of actions to, again, preserve that state of peace. That might look like me saying, right, and making a request of saying like, hey, I can't be around if we're, in a conversation and there's yelling, right? Like, would we be able to talk about this in a normal tone? I can make that request. Whether or not that person complies with the request really is irrelevant, because if they comply, great. Now I'm back in my circle of peace. And if they don't comply and they're like still yelling, maybe now they're yelling even more, then I have an option, which is to honor my boundary by excusing myself or removing myself from that conversation. And it doesn't have to be in a jerk kind of way. It's just like, hey, we can pick this up another time. I have to go, right? I can't be around when there's yelling and I got to go. And then I would actually remove myself, right? If this is a conversation over the phone, it might look like me saying like, hey, I can't communicate like this with you when you're yelling. We can talk some other time when we're both in a calm state, right? And I got to go. Bye. Right? So in those situations, all the responsibility is on me. Notice that with boundaries, the responsibility is always on you. Doesn't matter what the other person does. Now, check out this example though, right? What about this? What if I'm in a conversation where someone's yelling and, I communicate that I can't be around yelling and that person continues to yell and I continue to stay and engage in that conversation? Who's crossing my boundary now? If you guessed me, you'd be correct, right? I am then crossing my own boundary by not having integrity, by not upholding the actions that I need to do to protect my peace. Where if I'm staying there, maybe I just keep saying, hey, can you stop yelling? Hey, I can't be around the yelling. Hey, can we, if I even just stay there and keep stating my boundary, that's still me crossing my boundary because I'm just speaking about this state that I want, but not taking any action to get back in that state of peace. So this is where so many people get it wrong. They're like, that person keeps crossing my boundary. They don't respect my boundary. And actually, that's what I mean by saying it's an irrelevant question, because it doesn't matter what the other person does. A boundary is about what am I going to do to protect my peace, to have integrity to the limits that I said that I have. And, that looks different in any number of situations. Maybe there are some boundaries you might have that you're not going to have conversations about certain topics, right? Maybe certain topics are just off limits for you. And maybe somebody will keep kind of poking about that topic. Um, they're not crossing your boundary there. A boundary would be if you kind of acquiesced and said, like, oh, well, they kept asking me about it, so I felt like I needed to talk about it. That's an example of you crossing your own boundary there. Meanwhile, we need to be okay with protecting our own peace, even if it makes other people slightly uncomfortable or unhappy, right? Because the way that they feel is not our responsibility. So if they keep bringing in or talking about, poking on some topic that we don't want to talk about, I might react by saying like, hey, I'm not willing to talk about that, right? Do you want to talk about this, right? And maybe I offer another subject. And if that person continues to come back and like won't stop, um, then like, why am I in that conversation, right? I might have to say like, hey, I've communicated that I'm not willing to talk about that. And if you're not willing to, move on and talk about something else, then I think that the conversation is over for right now, right? And then taking action. The thing is, people automatically assume boundaries are about demands and like being a dictator and telling people, being very, and you can actually see just from the way I'm communicating this right now, a boundary can be very kind and very gentle, and it's actually like very loving. It lets people know what's the distance that you can love both them and yourself at the same time. So it's actually a very loving thing to do by saying, like, this is our safe playground, so to speak. Um, and when somebody crosses our boundary, again, it's not our job to somehow like make it about them. It's never about them or demonizing them. It's about us, right? Like, all right, I have to go. Um, maybe you're with a bunch of friends who like to hang out super late at night and you are really trying to stick to your schedule for health or whatever reasons, and like you need to get to bed by a certain time, right? And if they still want to stay out, that's not them crossing your boundary, right? It's up to you to say, hey, I need to get home by this time. So I need to make arrangements for myself to maybe leave. And if y'all still do what you do, go for it. Enjoy it. Have a blast. I have to sit myself out at this point. These are just different examples, right? For me, I'm someone in recovery. And what that means is that I can't be around people who are using, or people that are like really intoxicated or, under the influence somehow. Like it doesn't really, it's not comfortable for me. So I have a boundary around being around those type of people. So if I'm around somebody like that, I then have a choice. And I can say, do I want to continue being in the same environment, or do I need to add some sort of separation, right? And I get it that sometimes there are situations and contexts that make that a little more tricky and you have to be a little more creative. You can't just remove yourself. But at the end of the day, the principles are the same. So if you're wondering, what do you do when someone keeps crossing your boundary? I'd say, look at who's really crossing your boundary and who really has the power to uphold your boundary, which is you.